Since launch, I have made over 100,000 Lucent in Throne and Liberty completely free to play. Currently, you can see that I am at 84,000. This is after buying 2 maxed out sets of gear in Tier 1, as well as a bunch of battle passes, inventory, and things like that, and spending about 8k Lucent so far just in Tier 2. Now, whenever I showcase this, I always get the same few questions. Did you sell an Arc Boss weapon? No, I have looted a couple Arc Boss weapons, but they have both gone to my guild. Do you play a bunch of alts? No, I have done all of this on one single character. Did your guild give you this Lucent? A little bit. If you total up the winnings from Siege and inter-servers over the last few months, it's probably somewhere around 10,000 Lucent. But I have also had to give up a lot of loot to my guild, like those Arc Boss weapons that I mentioned, so that cuts in both directions. Did you buy it with real money? No, again, like I said, this is all earned completely free to play. Are you lying? And this one, I mean, at this point, I have streamed pretty much every sale since the launch of the game. I have routinely on stream gone into the auction house, gone in here and shown my various sell histories week after week. And so there's not really much more I can do to prove that this is legit. But even if you're still skeptical, that's fine. You don't have to take my word on any of this. Everything that I'm going to show you in this video will be self-evident. You can check it out for yourself and see that it's going to work. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that I am in the NA East region where prices tend to be higher. So, for example, if you are playing from EU, then you're probably going to want to reduce the numbers that I'm talking about in this video by about 30%. Some people will get discouraged by this and say it's a lot harder to make money on their server, but the truth is that goes in both directions. If you are making 30% less, that means that all the gear on your server costs 30% less as well. So even if you're watching this in the future and the prices are down by 80%, that means you're getting an 80% discount on your gear. Yes, you're going to have to adjust some things, but it is still totally possible to earn everything you need without spending real money. Now, if you are brand new to Throne and you don't even have the basics yet of how to sell items or why some items can be sold and others can't and all of that, go watch the first 5 minutes of my other Lucent video. I'll put a link down in the description, and that'll cover kind of the mechanics of all this and get you started. For this video, we're mainly going to be focusing on trade extraction and lithographs. So for trade extraction, remember you just click on the item and then spend your extraction stones, and that will destroy the item and give you an extract that you can then sell on the market so someone else can use this for that trait. And then for lithographs, I'm going to do the same thing, destroy the item, and it's going to give me a sellable blueprint. Someone can then buy this off the market and spend this blueprint to craft this gear so that they could use it for themselves. For trade extraction, I'm limited by these extraction stones, and for the precious lithographs, there's a few things I need to spend, but the main limiting factor is this enchanted ink. And because I'm limited on these things, I can't just sell every item that I loot. I need to establish a baseline of when it is actually worth it to sell something. So right now, for me, selling a tier 2 trait, which would cost 50 extraction stones, I want to try to list this for around 200 Lucent, which would be 4 Lucent per extraction stone. Even if I only get like 190 or 180, then I would probably do that. But if the price of this trait went all the way down to, 140 or 150, which would be more like a 3-to-1 ratio, then I might reconsider and look for other ways that I could spend these stones. And I would apply this ratio across all tiers. So T1 blue, I would be looking for around 20, T2 blue around 40, T1 purple around 100, and then we already established for this one I'd be looking around 200. This number is going to change across servers and across time, and it's also going to change based on how many extraction stones you have. If you're down to your last 200 extraction stones, you need to be really picky. You should probably be looking for items that are getting you like a 10-to-1 ratio. If you have 2,000 extraction stones lying around, then you can be a lot less picky. You might go down to 3-to-1 or even 2-to-1 so that you can actually make use of those excess stones. And then that same idea is going to apply to lithographs. So right now for a tier 2 armor or accessory lithograph, I will sell those for about 400 or a little less. And then tier 1, since tier 1 only takes 1 of these instead of 2, I will sell that for about half the price, so about 200 or a little less. And yes, there are still some purple T1 items that are worth lithographing, especially accessories. You just got to keep your eye on the market and look for those opportunities when they pop up, since a lot of newer returning players can't afford some of the T2 gear yet, so there's still a demand for some of the tier 1 stuff, like I said, especially the accessories. For weapon lithographs, it's a different story. Remember that in order to craft those blank lithographs, you're going to need these precious gems. And the weapon gems, these precious rubrics, are a lot more expensive than the ones that you need for weapons and armor. Plus, you need twice as many of these to craft a weapon lithograph as you would to craft an armor or an accessory lithograph. We're already getting hit with this 22% tax rate. When you subtract the cost of 10 of these off of a tier 1 weapon or 20 of these off of a tier 2 weapon, suddenly our prices need to be much higher. I do recommend that you learn to calculate this for yourself, but as a general rule, you need to lithograph your weapons for about 3 times more than you need to lithograph your armor or your accessories. So I'll put some numbers up on the screen here, but we can see that right now for NA, in order for me to make the same amount of profit per ink as a 400 litho T2 armor, I would need to sell a T2 weapon for about $11.50. And then for EU, if I wanted to make the same amount of profit as a 300 Lucent tier 2 armor, I would need to sell a tier 2 weapon for about $8.50. And same idea as the stones, the lower you are on ink, the more careful you should be on which items you sell. If you have hundreds of extra ink, then you can be less careful and you can sell things that aren't going to be as profitable. Just keep an eye on those gem prices and make sure you're not actually losing money, because people who are not paying attention do lose money, especially on those weapon lithographs. You'll find these stones and ink in various places, but the main two that you need to remember for a consistent supply are going to be the contract coin merchant here, who will refresh extraction stones and enchanted ink every single week, as well as the ornate coin shop, which has a refresh on the first of every month. While we are in here, we want to pick up both of these precious blessing pouches. These are the new ones, so we want to get these first, but the old ones are still really good too. These pouches are going to get you a piece of tier 2 gear like 2% of the time, but even when that doesn't happen, they're going to give you blue scrolls that you can run in Abyssal dungeons, which have a much higher chance of giving you T2 gear as well. The old pouches don't have T2 gear in them, but they do have some blue scrolls that we can use, and who knows, you might get a T1 accessory or something that still has a valuable trait. You can buy these pouches once a day from the regular contract merchant as well. If you're low on coins, then prioritize the new one. And when you are accepting your contracts, always select one, accept it, and then refresh so that you can get the most opportunities possible to get contracts that have another one of these plateau pouches. You should always prioritize taking these over any other contract type. When it comes to these blue scrolls that I'm getting out of my pouches, I want to keep all the ones from the expansion and dissolve the ones from tier 1. The easiest way to remember this is that the tier 1 missions all start with an S, so Silius, Shadow Crypt, Sanctum, Saradoma, all of these are going to get dissolved. We want to be very careful. I like to double check these and make sure that I'm not dissolving Burkant, Temple, or Crimson Mansion, which are the new ones in Talandre. But I'm going to dissolve these old ones here and get this Allied Forces Seal 2. I can then go and find the Sundry Crafter here, and I can select which contracts I want to make. The Talandre contracts are going to cost 25, and the old ones are going to cost 10. Obviously, don't make the old ones. We just broke those down. So we only want to craft these new ones. As far as your options here, Crimson Mansion is about to come out this weekend. When the gear is new, it is going to be very valuable. And that is a concept that you should always be keeping in the front of your mind if you want to make Lucent and Throne and Liberty. The best way to do that is going to be to sell items that are brand new, that just came into the game. I have a decent amount of these saved up, and that's because towards the end of Tier 1, I stopped running these scrolls and I started saving them in case they ended up being a really good value in Tier 2. But I wasn't impressed enough with these first 2 dungeons to go ahead and spend my seals right away. There were some good pieces in both of these, especially Temple of Truth. If I had to pick one right now, I would probably craft these and hope for the Lotus Chest or the Vanguard Boots, since those seem to have the most value out of any of the Abyssal gear right now. But I'm kind of taking a gamble that some of the new pieces coming out in Crimson Mansion are going to be worth even more than that. So when we get Crimson Mansion on my server, I will be taking a look at those prices and probably crafting these and trying to do them on the first day when the prices are as high as possible. The next way that we're going to be getting loot is from the solo dungeon Hall of Illusion. Depending on which tier you do this, you have about a 20% to get one of these weapons at tier 1, 32% at tier 2, 40%, 47%, and then 52% on the maximum tier. So the biggest jump is going to be getting through those first few tiers. I would try to start on at least tier 2 if you can. 3,300 isn't too bad to hit, especially if you are taking advantage of those blue gear codes that Amazon and a bunch of streamers have been handing out recently. But even just on tier 2, you already have about a 1 in 3 chance to get one of these weapons rather than this consolation prize chest. And since you can run this 3 times a week, on average you can expect about one of these per week at tier 2. Obviously you might get unlucky and get none. That happened to me the first week on tier 3 when I had a 40% chance to get something. I missed it all 3 times, but who knows, maybe you'll get lucky the opposite direction and you'll hit all 3 of these. Now, be careful about turning those weapons into lithos. Even the more popular options are probably already below the threshold where it's worth spending all those rubrics to make one of these. However, the traits are still selling pretty good. Even the bad traits in many cases are going to be worth selling, and some of the better traits are still super worth selling. Next thing we're going to focus on is our dimensional and our abyssal tokens. And hopefully this should be obvious, but you should never be letting these things completely cap out. Since they refresh a little bit every day, if they're at max, you're not going to be able to get any more. And these are by far the biggest ways that you are going to earn loot in Throne and Liberty. Even the old tokens, the dimensional contract token ones, are still very important. You want to make sure that you are running these 2-star dungeons. They still have accessories that have very valuable traits, plus they have these loyalty coins, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that you can spend to craft tier 2 gear over time. They also help to refresh your Abyssal contract tokens, and these are going to be crucial, especially with the upcoming release of Crimson Mansion, if you want to grind that new gear and try to get lucky and sell these items when they are at their peak. But even in the future, as prices go down, Abyssal Dungeon grind is still crucial. You're going to be looting items that you can use to stack blessing and help you with your trades. You're going to be looting all sorts of different gems that you can sell on the market, especially if you get some of those rubrics. So start learning these dungeons and running these as soon as possible. And whenever there is a new piece of content coming out, like that Crimson Mansion, make sure that you get your tokens as close to max out as possible. I'm a little low on mine right now, so I'm going to run a bunch of the 2-star and 3-star dungeons to get these tokens refreshed so that I'm close to cap on 40k when the new Abyssal Dungeon comes out. Don't forget to buy more of these from the Battle Pass star shops as well. For the old Battle Pass right now, you want to prioritize Contract 2. And then after that, it's kind of up to you if you want to do the resistance contracts for more plateau pouches and, 50 abyssal tokens each, or if you just want to go straight to getting more abyssal tokens so that you can grind more of that Crimson Mansion when that drops. For the new Battle Pass, same logic, except I would also prioritize these Nebula Stones probably above everything else. And the reason why I say probably is because it depends a little bit on how you're doing on Nebula Island. This is an inter-server PvP zone, so it can be really competitive, and this kind of needs its entire own video in and of itself, but there are a few things we want to touch on real quick for the purposes of making Lucent. First of all, if you are struggling to hold a spot at Nebula Island, there is a peace section over at Fog Forest. However, it does seem like the drop rates at the PvP area are better. But even with the lower drop rate, if you can get a decent spot out in Fog Forest, it's going to be better to grind there rather than to go to a PvP area if you're dying a lot in the PvP zones. You only have a limited amount of time to grind here each week, so you want to try to make sure that none of it goes to waste. This is a very valuable place to grind right now for multiple reasons. You're going to get a lot of artifacts here, which don't make you any money, but they will make your character a lot stronger. For the purposes of making Lucent, though, we're going to be getting Nebula pouches, which have gear in them. We're going to be getting Nebula Stones, which we can spend at a merchant in town. And we're going to be getting Nebula Charge Stones. And if you get the version of these that drop, then you can actually sell them on the market for Lucent. So the one that you buy in town on the merchant or in the battle pass, you can't sell, but the one that drops off the mobs in Nebula, you can sell. If you are doing really well here and you feel like you're getting a good value, then just go ahead and use the stones that you loot. If you're struggling, then sell these stones on the market and try to use that Lucent to get stronger. When it comes to the Nebula Stones, not to be confused with the Nebula Charge Stones, those are a currency that you're going to spend either with the regular Nebula Stone guy or with the greater Nebula Stone guy. There's only a handful of options here, and the best bet for most people is going to be spending your stones on these pouches. These are very cheap considering the value that you can get inside of them. While it would be nice to have some more trade unlock stones, I think they're just a bit too expensive here. Artifacts we're going to be looting a lot of anyways, and we can't sell these, so the only other thing to look at here is the Nebula Essence, which will cost 5 regular Nebula Stones. I can take that Nebula Essence plus another 10 stones to the All Things workshop, And I can craft a greater Nebula Stone, which I can then spend over here. So that means our regular Nebula Stone to our greater Nebula Stone is going to be a 15-to-1 ratio. And as far as what we can spend a greater stone on, again, only a few options. I wouldn't go with the artifacts. Looking at this charge stone here, this is going to cost 3 greater Nebula Stones. So that's 45 of the regular stones. If you are looting more than 45 regular stones per half hour, then this is going to pay for itself. If you are not looting that many, then you kind of have to decide for yourself if this is going to be worth it, or if you would rather just spend this currency on the conquest chest or the pouches. As far as the conquest chest, this is 15 times more expensive than the pouch, and it's only got about 3 times more loot. So I do think the pouch is a much better value. However, the one exception to that is that the Nebula chest does have a handful of accessories that do not drop from the normal pouch. They only drop from this chest and from Nebula field bosses. Nebula field bosses are super contested by the top Zergs on each cluster right now, so it's very hard, even if you're in a competitive guild, to get loot from one of those bosses. But if you get really lucky, you might be able to loot one of those accessories from this conquest chest. And before you get too excited about the Nebula drops in this chest, remember that the ones in the chest are not going to be sellable on the market. So don't look at those chests and think, oh, if I get this belt, I'm going to be able to sell it for 60k. First of all, a lot of these items haven't sold yet, so they're not actually worth the value that people are posting them. Some of them might be, but a lot of them aren't. And second of all, these sellable versions only come from those contested bosses. You are not going to get this out of the conquest chest. If you wanted to try to make money off of a belt of the Night Master that you get from a chest, the only way to do that would be to extract the trait. A lot of people have already looted this out of the chest. A lot of people have already extracted the trait. So these are the prices here that you can expect. Even if the main item is worth tens of thousands, the traits are not going to be worth that much. So only buy the chests if you want to try to get really lucky and get one of these items for your builds. If you're just trying to maximize Lucent, go for the pouches first. And then if you still have stones left over, then you can get some chests. Next thing we want to be aware of is our adventure coins. We mentioned these a little bit earlier in the video. There's 2 versions of these. There's the Epic Level 1 and the Epic Level 2. The Level 2 is called Loyalty, and then the Level 1 coin, which we're usually going to get from random matchmaking, is called Fighting Spirit. This random matchmaking chest also has a 10% chance to get me 5 loyalty coins as well. So if you average that out, that's about half of a loyalty coin per run over time. Because of that, it is a pretty good value to do this random matchmaking. I would definitely do random matchmaking every time you do a 2-star. For 3-star, I do see an argument for skipping the random matchmaking and just targeting Twisted Laboratory. That's because several of these pieces, the accessories in here are really good, plus things like the Transcendent armor still have a better litho price compared to a lot of the other armors that you can get in 3-star. However, there are valuable items in all of the 3-star dungeons still, so I don't think that random matchmaking is a bad idea. In fact, it's usually what I do. Honestly, I could kind of go either way on this one. If you get lucky, then just targeting Twisted Lab can definitely make you some good money, but if you just want to be more consistent and build up those coins over time, I would probably focus on doing the random matchmaking. Part of the reason why this is kind of a gamble either way is because we don't fully know the value of these adventure coins at this time. When Talandre first launched, there was an accessory that was available to be crafted with these before it should have been, the Ring of Eternal Flames. So people were spending 320 loyalty coins to make this and then selling it for like 5,000-6,000 Lucent because not a lot of people had that many coins yet. And honestly, there's just no way to predict things like this. Like I said, this ring was put into the shop probably earlier than it should have been since you couldn't get it anywhere else yet. So maybe that will happen with other items in the future. We don't know. There is one really big addition to this shop that is almost certainly coming, and that is the 3-star dungeon weapons from Korea. So in Korea, those weapons were craftable right from the start. In our version, you can't make them yet. Weapons like the Berkant daggers or the Crimson Hell Skewer. You spend 400 loyalty coins in Korea right now to make one of these. There's a good guess that our version of those is going to get them on March 27th, just because it's a really big content update, and most of the initial Talandre expansion will be kind of finished by then. So if you want to try to save up 400 coins before the 27th, you might be able to buy one of those weapons and sell it at a really crazy price during that first day. However, there could be a lot of other people that are trying to do this as well, so it's really hard to predict how profitable that's actually going to be. And on top of that, NCSoft could just decide to do something different with those weapons altogether, such as put them in the solo dungeon so that we don't have to get the same solo dungeon rewards for the next 2 months. So anything goes at this point. It's up to you, like I said, if you want to focus on these coins or if you want to target farm Twisted Lab and try to focus on some of those accessories and chest pieces while they're still good. As far as what you can spend the loyalty coins on right now, I would say none of this stuff is too impressive. A lot of this stuff has already come down in price, so that I would not say that paying $320 or even $200 is going to be worth it for a lot of these items. I do think your best bet at this point is trying to save up $400 for the new items, but like I said, that is speculation, that is not guaranteed. We're just basing that off of what Korea has. When it comes to spending our T1 coins, there's a couple good options. We can buy some gear here, or we can spend it to get some trait unlock stones. I definitely would not spend your T2 coins on unlock stones. I do think that the best bet right now is to try to save these for new gear that comes out. But for T1, these are a pretty good value. It's 6 coins for 3 stones, so 2-to-1 ratio. If you have some expensive items in your build, especially like field boss weapons, those are going to need 200 unlock stones each. And then just in general, certain pieces of armor or accessories might be hard to get those traits unlocked. So depending on your build, you may want to focus all your T1 coins into unlock stones until you have an amount that you feel good about. Otherwise, the best stuff to look at right now is going to be necklaces, rings, and capes. When it comes to capes in particular, there is one, the Ancient Tapestry Mantle, that only costs 40 coins instead of 60. So this could be a really good value if you get lucky and get the good traits on it. Because it is cheaper, it is hard to make any kind of money off of a litho for this thing. So that's the downside, is that it can be more risky, but maybe you can find some other value for the bad traits, such as using them to stack blessing. The ring and the neck are going to cost 60 coins each, but these are going to be more consistent, and sometimes you can even make lithographs out of the ones that have bad traits. So that kind of turns into a win-win, because either you get one of these traits that has a good value on it, or you get a litho that you can sell instead. These litho prices are very volatile. It's going to change every single day. These dimensional bands are both popular. Sometimes the sapphire one is more expensive, sometimes amber, sometimes they're both high, sometimes they're both low. So you just have to get used to checking the different options and seeing which ones are good here. Chosen One and Alabaster Band are also decent. And then for necklaces, there are several of these that are still popular as well, so I recommend you get used to checking them and kind of learning what the market looks like on your server. A lot of people cannot afford T2 accessories yet, so they're actually building these T1s out still. And even people who are building out T2 accessories need these so that they can stack blessing, or so that they can spend their blessing to upgrade traits. So these will hold their value for a while, and we may even see prices spike for things like bracelet and belt, depending on what's coming out. With the release of Crimson Mansion this week, depending on which accessories from that dungeon end up being the popular ones, we are for sure going to see the prices of some of these go way up. So take as much advantage of that as you can while that gear is new and fresh. One more tip here about what not to do. It is very popular right now to craft these Rex Crossbows. And that is because Rex is one of the only T1 items that can have attack speed as a trait. You can see the full list here. The other 2 purples are Arc Boss weapons, so probably not going to extract those. And since a ton of T2 weapons now have attack speed as a potential trait, there is a huge demand for this trait compared to Tier 1. However, a couple things to note. This is 120 coins versus these 60 coins that we were spending for those other pieces. And if we look at every other trait on Rex, they are all way too low to sell. So not only am I spending twice as many coins to make this, but I have only a 1 in 6 rather than a 50-50 chance of getting something good. And while it's true that attack speed might sell more individually for one of those other traits, you're just going to have to get really lucky here for this to come close to like a necklace or a ring. Most of the time, this is just going to whiff completely. There's no litho option that you can make money off of either. And so on average, this ends up being several times worse than doing one of those other items that I mentioned. Just one more side note here. For those of you that are buying those Rex traits, the price that the T1 attack speed is listed on the market is consistently higher than the T2 attack speed. It's been like this pretty much the whole expansion, but it's still funny. So if for some reason you didn't think to check these, then yeah, you can save a lot of money and blessing by getting the Tier 2 attack speed instead. The next thing that we want to make use of is our special resistance medals. There's a couple ways that you're going to get these. The first is from various events, and some of these are a little easier than others. I really like this Obsidian event. You only need 420 points to max out for the Peace version, and even if you don't get any of these rank rewards over here, you will get a bunch of these rune bundles and 4 special resistance medals. You can also get a bunch of these medals from the Exploration Codex. These are in basically every zone. The little blue missions that pop up on the side of your screen over here. You can get other things from them sometimes too, such as Guardians and Amatoys, so just keep an eye out for those. But you'll get a lot of resistance medals, and some of you have probably run into this resistance goods merchant. And honestly, most of the stuff in here is kind of underwhelming. A lot of it is a one-time limit anyways. For the weekly stuff, I do sometimes like these cooking baskets, but generally nothing in here is too crazy. However, there is another use for our resistance medals that a lot of people are currently overlooking, and that is if we go to the armor crafter and find this lithograph section down here, I can actually spend these resistance medals to craft armor. 40 of them for tier 1 or 80 of them for tier 2. I probably wouldn't bother with any of the tier 1s, but if we look at the tier 2 resistance gears, a lot of them actually still have quite a bit of value, especially the helmets and the chest pieces. So I'll just scroll through all of the helmets and chests and then find which one has the best prices at that moment, and then kind of just gamble it. Doesn't always work out. If I went for this full plate, you know, I've got a lot of traits that could be good, but I could get unlucky and get stuck with the melee evasion. We might as well go for it, because we're going to be getting a bunch of these resistance medals from the codex or from events anyways, and we already saw that there's not a ton of other things to use them on. In the future, when these prices start to come down, I don't know if helmet and chest are still going to be good. I suspect that chest will probably last longer just because the traits are a little bit harder to get. But we might also keep an eye on gloves in the future for range or hit chance traits. Since those traits don't exist in tier 1, the only way you can get them is buying the T2 versions, and that does keep the prices of those traits pretty high. So if these crash in the future and the chest and the helmets are no longer worth making, keep an eye on the gloves, even if it's just a 1 in 6 chance. If you don't have anything else to spend these medals on, you can go for it and see if you get lucky. Don't get baited on the lithographs for these though. If you do get a bad trait, I would probably not spend 50 ink on this. Every once in a while, I'll see these jump up to like 400 or 500, but it's just because the listings ran out. It's not because people are actually paying that much. So if you see one of these sitting for like 450, then you're probably not going to get that much. If you try to sell it, someone else is going to post it for 350 and then 250, and then you're going to wish that you hadn't wasted your ink. When it comes to field bosses, always prioritize these over whatever else you're doing. Your contracts and your Abyssal dungeon, your 3 stars, those can all wait until later. These field bosses only come around at set times. Make sure you are attending every single one. It is easier than ever to get loot from these. There's a ton of different instances now. Every single field boss has a peace portal, and half of the arc bosses have a peace portal. So if you're online when one of these spawns, do not miss it. You always want to go to whatever the newest boss available is, the one that's level 55 that spawns in Talandre. That's going to drop all of the new tier 2 stuff. And just make sure that you are in a guild that has loot rules that you agree on and leaders that you trust. I've heard stories of people joining guilds when they're new and then having their items stolen from them, so don't let that happen to you. The more damage that you do to one of these bosses, the higher chance that it is that you're going to get loot. So don't forget to eat the correct food type for whatever the boss is that you're fighting. Make sure you pop a remedy right when the boss becomes able to be damaged, and pop your guardian for even more damage. Try to form groups that at least have a healer that can keep you alive and a couple bows that can put deadly marker on the boss so that everybody can get their cooldowns faster. That's going to drastically increase your PvE damage and increase the odds that you and your friends can get some drops. Remember that if you get a field boss weapon, it's going to come with this sellable border, which means you can list it right on the market. You don't need to extract the trait from it, and lithographing is not an option. However, if you end up getting the equipment selection chest, which is a 1 in 300 chance of participating on any boss, then you could choose a weapon out of here. Sometimes this is the best option, sometimes it is not. The weapon you get here will not be sellable like the regular one, so if you were going to try to make Lucent, you would have to extract the weapon trait. And just because the weapon is a really good value doesn't mean that the trait is also a really good value. You're going to have to check. There could be a piece of armor or an accessory here that has more expensive traits. You can litho the armor and accessories just like you normally would, since they're not considered boss items. It's just the weapon that's named after the boss that can't be lithoed. So just be aware of what your options are in either scenario, and make sure you are checking to ensure that you get the best deal. Get in the habit of visiting this guild merchant every day. Over time, you should build up a good stockpile of coins, and those can be useful to buy things like the big health potions, the weekly conversion stones, and the polished crystals if you are low in those. For the purposes of making Lucent, we want to pay attention to these material selection chests right here. I'm currently buying these every day because I need a lot of raw materials to craft my lithographs and also to craft those items with adventure coins that we talked about earlier in the video. And then the next big thing that we want to look at here is the rare special weapon selection chest. That selection chest is going to allow me to choose one of these blue golem weapons. These are not an amazing value at the moment. The main reason that I'm mentioning these is because we talked about how there's going to be an update at some point where things like the Burkant daggers and the Crimson Hell Skewer and the other dungeon weapons from Korea get added to our version of the game. And those weapons are extremely popular. Many of them are the most popular weapon for that class, which means a ton of people are going to be upgrading weapon traits all at once when those get added. Like we talked about earlier, when new gear gets added, it doesn't just affect the price of the new gear. All of the old items are going to go up in price as well because people will use these to upgrade traits and to stack blessing. So pile up as many guild coins as you can, and then whenever those new weapons come out, whether it's the 27th or some other day, be ready to go to the guild shop and buy a bunch of these. These were sky high at the beginning of Talandre, and I bet there will be another big boost when we get those weapons. Another way that we can potentially make a ton of Lucent is from the material transmutation system. And right now, these only go up to conversion tier 3, but on March 27th, we are getting an update to the game that is going to be adding something called trait resonance. In Korea, the way that you get the resources for your trait resonance is by using material transmutation, and then there's another reward down here that gives you the trait resonance fragments. This goes all the way up to tier 5 in Korea, and we are expecting that that update will come on March 27th when we get this new system. Conversion tier 4 and conversion tier 5 are going to give you a chance to get tier 2 gear. We don't know which items are going to be added and which items are going to be left out, but if you guys remember items like the Belt of Bloodlust or the Band of Universal Power from tier 1, those things were huge money makers early on when material transmutation was first added because of how hard they were to get elsewhere. So while I don't expect there to be Field Boss or Arc Boss weapons that are added to this system, it is very likely that the rarer armors and accessories from those bosses might be included here. If you have leftover purples that are not worth selling and that you can't use the trait for, start setting them aside for material transmutation, especially extra weapons. As you can see, I've got quite a stockpile that I have been saving up here. The weapons are worth twice as many points as armor or accessories. So when this system does get added and when we get those new tiers of conversion, I'm going to have a ton of gambles ready to go. Right on the first day, I'm going to spam as many as I can, hope I get lucky and sell those items while they are at their peak. One other thing to mention here is the ores. These are actually pretty good for transmutation in the long run. Most of you right now probably need every piece of ore that you can get for upgrading your gear or your skills. But in the future, when those things are maxed out, you can use your contracts to target the most efficient ores possible. And in order, that's going to be the yellow missions being the best, followed by green, followed by red, and then try to avoid blue unless there's absolutely nothing left. Keep in mind that the precious pouches are still always the #1 priority. If you see one of those, you want to grab that and then refresh and try to get another one. If you guys saw my material transmutation video when this was first launched, then you know that when it comes to the red, green, and yellow ores, we want to keep those blue. They are not worth upgrading to purple here. But when it comes to the Marand ore, if we want to upgrade those to purple to throw them in here for some more points, we can. However, I would only do that if you have a lot of extra solent. Otherwise, it's kind of not worth it. And then hopefully this is obvious, but never ever throw your base material in here and never throw these obsidian pieces in here as well. You get barely any points for these and they are just way more valuable for other things. You need these for the Black Anvil weapon and you need these for lithos and other crafting that we've already discussed. If you follow these strategies and you look for opportunities to profit off of new updates to the game, you can absolutely stay ahead of the curve, even as a free-to-play player. If you guys have any more questions about this stuff, feel free to leave a comment or come visit me live streaming on either Twitch or YouTube. I want to give a big thank you to those of you who've decided to become channel members here on YouTube or subscribers over on Twitch. If you want to help me out for free, then just share this video with a friend or a guildie, help them to get some Lucent and some gear as well. Each time you share the video, that's a huge boost to the algorithm. YouTube loves that stuff, so I appreciate you guys so much for the support. I've got some more videos in the works, including build guides and gear progression guides and things like that, so subscribe if you guys want to see more, and I will see you again soon.